and thank you very much for attending the program today. My name is Catherine Tarver and I work in the Adult Services Department here at the library. Under our Ignite initiative, we provide business, career and lifelong learning programs and resources for individuals who may be starting or building a business, changing or growing a career, or kindling lifelong interests through continuing education. Please check out our website at wheatonlibrary.org/ignite. It's my pleasure to introduce Tiffany Olson, who will present Foundations of Public Speaking. For the last decade, Tiffany has helped corporate clients hone their communication skills through workshops and one-on-one coaching. She loves the work she gets to do and the impact it can make, such as building stronger teams, equipping managers to navigate difficult conversations, helping individuals gain confidence, and more. Her current work with corporate clients has provided her with an exciting new avenue to help others learn, grow, and connect. Please welcome Tiffany Olson.
Thank you. So thank you for being here, both in person and over Zoom. I'm excited to be here tonight, and I wanted to get started by giving you a couple of pieces of food for thought, because you're here, you chose to be here, which means you understand the importance of public speaking and the necessity of communicating your message effectively. So I want to give you a couple of pieces of food for thought. According to the Career Center at UC Davis, they say the one skill most often sought by employers is the ability to communicate well, to listen, to write, and to speak effectively. And this particular skill crosses all industries, and so developing it will significantly help you in advancement throughout your career. I've been teaching at the college level for 25 years, and one of the classes that I teach is public speaking, and it is a required class for all students who attend the college. And so a lot of times I'll have someone come in, oh, I'm going to be in accounting, or I'm going to be in IT. I don't need a public speaking class. But according to the Houston Chronicles, they say even for jobs with limited interaction, it is important to have strong communication skills because it helps to bridge the gap between yourself and your supervisors. And it also helps to build relationships with you and your coworkers, with clients, with customers. And according to Workforce Solutions, they say that we're looking at both oral and written communication skills. So it's the ability to write in a manner that can be easily understood by people who are maybe unfamiliar with the topic. And then it's a matter of being able to speak in a way that is pleasing to a wide variety of audiences. I say all of that because communication skills are really important, but if you are like so many other people and it's not something that you feel really confident in right now, I don't want you to worry about that, because communication skills, and specifically public speaking skills, are not innate traits. They're things that are learned, things that you can get better at with more practice. So I'm a big fan of leading with vulnerability. I'm all about vulnerability. And so I want to introduce you to me, the lifelong student of communication. That was me when I was just about 10 years old, and that's when my public speaking career started. I like to say that I'm a student of communication, a lifelong student of communication, and it started then. I was in Mrs. Hawkins' English class, and I talked a lot in there, and so she's like, well, let's put this to use. And so she recruited me for the speech team, and I joined the speech team, and really, I liked it. I wasn't really good at it, but I liked it, and so I stuck with it and stayed with it through middle school, and then went to high school and started seeking out opportunities for being in front of people and hosting different shows at the school and doing morning announcements and competing on the speech team at the state level. And then I went to college and competed at the national level for my school's speech team. And then about 25 years ago, I earned my master's degree and started teaching college level communication courses. And 10 years ago, I started focusing more on corporate and organizational clients and going into companies and leading workshops, all on different aspects of how to communicate your message effectively. Public speaking, this was my very first workshop that I started offering, all about how to give a public address. And now I offer workshops like connection through communication. So how to listen effectively, how to have tough conversations, how to visually present your message, PowerPoints, and things that accompany your message but don't take over your message. So I'm excited to be here today because I'm really passionate about giving skills to people who struggle in this area. You might have heard of the book Outliers, The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell. And in that book, it's now a very often cited study, but it's the 10,000 hour study, that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to achieve the level of mastery in whatever field you're in. 10,000 hours of practice. So this mastery of communication, of public speaking skills, is not something that's going to come quickly or easily necessarily, but this I know is true. Your level of confidence and your ability, especially in public speaking, increases with practice and experience. So it's one of those things, you know, like anything in life, the thing that you're most fearful of, you have to practice in order to get better. But I don't want to practice because I'm not comfortable doing it. So let me just encourage you, that is the most important thing that you can do. So tonight we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at message design, that is what you say, your message. And we're going to look at delivery, which is how you say it. And it is really important for me that you, this group of people here and those of you at home, that this workshop is really specific to you. So if there's anything that you want me to spend a little bit more time on, or you've got a specific question about a situation you're in, you can ask me while we're going through it. I'll also stay here through Q&A and open it up for questions at the end. So I took a workshop a handful of years ago, and the workshop facilitator had these stop and jot opportunities woven throughout, where she would teach us a concept, and then she would give us time to apply what it was that she taught us to ourselves. And I loved that idea because if you're like me, and I'm sure you're very much like me in this way, we are bombarded with information all of the time. And it might be information where you're like, ooh, that's good. I need to remember that. And then we forget it. If we don't write it down right away, we forget it. It goes in one ear and out the other. And so I've got some of these stop and jot moments woven in tonight because I want you to think a little bit about what it is that I'm talking to you about. So when you hear the phrase public speaking, how does that make you feel? What physiologically goes on in your body when you hear, I'm gesturing here because a lot of times people are like, ugh, makes me upset in my stomach. Like I'm so nervous, I don't like that feeling. And then what are your current communication struggles? And we're talking specifically tonight about public speaking, but when I say communication struggles, maybe it's interpersonally, one-on-one that's harder for you. Or maybe it's in a small group that's a challenge. So I want you to take just a minute or two, and how does public speaking make you feel? You're going to jot an answer down to that. And then what are your current communication struggles? I would love for this to be interactive. So talk to me for a minute. What did you say about how does public speaking make you feel? Nervous, right? How many of you are nervous? Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm nervous still when I do public address because like tonight, I've never given a presentation at the library before. I don't know what to expect here. And so I came here and I'm like, oh, I hope hope this goes well, hope the technology works, hope I've got some friendly faces in the audience. That's very normal to be nervous because it's fear of the unknown. There's so many unknowns when you go into a public speaking experience. And so that causes that apprehension. Okay, so nervous. What else?
I'm interested in some of the finer points that you could eloquate when you're speaking. And I think also too, sometimes, unless you have something written down.
Yeah.
Now, if you do it on the fly.
Yeah.
You could say, sometimes you have to almost feel how the crowd is receiving it.
Right. Right.
And so you gotta, there's a lot of give and take. You might have one topic you're very good at.
Right.
And can really elucidate that. But unless the crowd reciprocates or is in the mood to receive it, it can be hard.
Yeah, you've got to make sure and check in with your audience all of the time and make sure you're having a good rapport. And you hit on something that's interesting. Sometimes if we know our topic and we're very confident in our topic, our nervousness goes down. But if it's a topic that we're like, I don't know what I'm talking about, we get nervous, more nervous. So communication struggles, throw out some words to me. What are you struggling with right now?
My heart rate, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My heart rate goes very high, and I'm like, oh, God.
Elevated heart rate, okay, yeah. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say sometimes, you're talking and then you don't know what to say next.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
or you say, or,
Yeah.
it's like you're putting your thoughts together at the same time.
For sure.
And trying to speak,
right,
and then you feel awkward.
right. Yeah, the vocal fillers, the ahs, the ums, the,
Or
yes.
I
Yeah.
would say concentration.
Yeah. Staying focused while you're speaking, you mean?
Kind of, it's just like there's so much noise around, it's kind of hard to stay like concentrated and like follow through.
Yeah, hard to stay focused and concentrated. I'm going to repeat some of what you say so that our friends at home can hear, so just understand that. So I want to start with message design, and message design is what you're going to say. That's your message, how you craft your message. And a lot of times when we are given the task of presenting or preparing a presentation, we want to start with the introduction. I'm gonna open up a Word document and I'm gonna just start writing. And I would challenge you to try a different approach. Rather than starting with writing the script or writing the outline, I want you to do a little bit of pre-writing work. So I want you to think about this concept of general purpose. And your general purpose can be one of three things. It could be to inform, to persuade, or to entertain. To inform, to persuade, or to entertain. And let me just remove one of them for you, because entertaining is like if you are an after dinner speaker or doing a monologue or a stand-up comedy. So for the most part, to entertain is not going to be our general purpose. Our general purpose will either be to inform or to persuade. And exactly, good point, Jessica. There is going to be overlap. There will often be overlap. Like tonight, there's overlap. My general purpose is what? To inform or to persuade? What do you think mine is? Yeah, to inform. I'm trying to inform you about what it takes to give an effective presentation. But I also need to persuade you that I know what I'm talking about, that I am credible, that my approach is a good one. All right, so there is going to be some element of persuasion to it. But you need to determine what yours is. So what does it mean to inform someone?
Give them information that they don't have.
Exactly.
Or if they have, but you're giving them additional information.
Exactly. To give information is to inform. Persuade means what? What do you do when you're trying to persuade someone? Convince. You're trying to convince someone. You're trying to get someone to change their mind. Maybe to take action as a result. So when you're persuading, it's one step further. Not only do I want you to understand what I'm saying, but I want you to do something as a result. So let's say we are going to have a blood drive. Actually, there is a blood drive coming up at the library. Let's say that I'm involved in that, and I want to inform you about the blood drive. Okay, show of hands, how many of you have donated blood before? Oh, good. Okay, so about half of you have. So for those of you that have already donated, you kind of know the process, but for those that haven't, you're going to sign up just at the circulation desk, and then we have appointments every 30 minutes. And what will happen, you'll come down here, you'll fill out an intake form, they'll take your vitals, and then you'll go sit in a chair, they'll insert an IV. After about 15 minutes, you will have donated a pint of blood, and then you'll recover in the canteen area, have some snacks, and just hang out. And yeah, that's it. So if you would like to donate blood, you can sign up upstairs, and we'd love to have you. Okay, that's what it means to inform. You're just providing information. But let's say you want to persuade, because maybe it's something you feel really strongly about. Maybe you got some skin in the game. So if I'm going to persuade you, and I want to make sure, because only about half of you have given blood before, so I need to really think about how can I appeal to these people who know about the idea of giving blood, but I really need to appeal to them. So at the library, soon coming up, we're going to be having a blood drive. And I know that only about half of you have donated before, so I want to tell you a story. My mom had a 2.5-year battle with cancer, and my mom recently died a couple of months ago, and it was pretty awful, as that is. And but when my mom was sick, when she was sick with cancer, she would have to have blood transfusions often because her platelet count would get too low, and she would have to have blood transfusions. And about 17 years ago, I had a friend whose daughter had cancer and needed regular blood transfusions. And I made just a decision 17 years ago that every 8 weeks I will donate blood. And now I feel even more passionately about it because somebody gave my mom the gift of life for all of those times when she needed it. And I'm sure you've all been touched by cancer, someone in your family who's struggled with an illness, or a friend. And so when we give blood, we save 3 lives. And so all you have to do is sign up for the blood drive that's coming up in a couple of weeks. You spend 30 minutes of your time and you give the gift of life to 3 families who so desperately want their loved one to be better. Okay, that is persuasion. I need to not only give you information, but I need to make you feel, I want to do something about that. I'm going to change my behavior. Yeah.
Wouldn't you also want to know why some people are hesitant to give blood, because then you can address
Absolutely.
those issues?
Absolutely. That's a great point. She said, wouldn't you like to know why some people choose to not give blood? Because then we could address that. Absolutely. When you have more time, you would want to find out, meet the audience's objections. Maybe the audience says, oh, I can't give blood because my iron's too low. And so we're going to talk a little bit later about a target audience, but that person is not in my target audience because I can't convince you to give blood. If your iron's too low, you're not in my target audience because you won't be persuaded because you can't. And some people are like, oh, I'm scared of needles. And so we can address different concerns that our audience has that prevents them from doing what it is that we want them to do. Okay, so we need to determine what our general purpose is. Harvey Diamond says, if you don't know what you want to achieve in your presentation, your audience never will. And so you need to decide, what do I want to accomplish in this? You need to decide that before you even start writing. What is my goal? Second thing that we do before we even start writing the content of the presentation is we come up with our thesis or our central idea. And you might remember back to, high school or college English classes where you had to have a thesis statement for each paper. Something to think about, though, when you're writing a paper, we can go back and reread your thesis statement multiple times to make sure we understand it. If you're giving a speech, You get one chance. So you need to make sure it's very clear. So my thesis statement today was the message design and delivery. It's where I told you that, these are the points I'm going to talk about. In order to give an effective presentation, you need to consider message design and delivery. So it should be very clear to your audience what it is that you're going to cover in your presentation. It's really helpful for your thesis or central idea to come up with 3 main points to structure your speech. So let's say that you're at work and you have to give an update on what's been going on in your department. Maybe you want to talk about, maybe your 3 main points are first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. Maybe it's projects that we just completed, projects that are in the pipeline, and then next year. So the reason you want to structure it with 3 main points is otherwise it becomes just a bullet point data dump of all of these ideas that aren't linked together. So it's really helpful to have some structure to it, some main points. So when I was putting this workshop together, and I do this for all of my workshops, I do a brainstorming session kind of like that, where I write down every single thing that I can think of that I want to talk about in that workshop. And there's a quotation that the best way to have a good idea is to have many ideas, which I like that quotation, because don't edit yourself. When you're brainstorming, get it all down. Don't edit, that's probably a dumb idea. No, it's not. Get it on there, because especially if you're brainstorming in a group, because you may say something and I'm like, oh, that reminds me, and then that triggers something in me. So don't limit yourself when you're brainstorming. But then from your brainstorm, you're going to start to see how things come together, and then you can develop it into an outline. And in the packet of handouts that you have, there is a format for the outline. That is the format that I still use. It is a format that is appropriate for a 10-minute speech or a 6-hour-long workshop that you're leading. And you can tailor it to whatever works for you. So for some people, maybe you want to have a lot of notes, maybe you want a sentence outline, whatever format, and we're going to be going through the outline. Okay, so your outline. Take that gobbledygook of ideas and then put it into a very structured format. So there are 3 parts of every presentation that you're going to do. There's the introduction, the body, and a conclusion. Every presentation that you do should have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So we're going to break those down right now and talk about what is included in each section. So first is your introduction. Your introduction is going to be about 10% of your total speaking time. The very first thing that is going to come out of your mouth when you're giving a presentation should be your attention getter. A lot of times people want to start by revealing their topic. No, because you want to tease the audience with your attention getter. Now, sometimes, like tonight, you all knew what my topic was before you came here, right? And sometimes people will know what your topics are, but you don't need to say, tonight I'm going to talk to you about effective presentations. No, I'm going to start with, I started with the Houston Chronicle and those source citations to kind of help you to understand why this workshop is important. So, attention getter, there are a handful of different devices that you can use to gain the audience's attention. First is a quotation. So maybe you want to start with somebody else's words. According to Alexander Gregg, there are 3 things to aim at in public speaking. First, to get into your subject. then to get your subject into yourself, and lastly, to get your subject into the heart of your audience. So I could have started this presentation with that quotation. Maybe you want to start with a question. So for my blood donation speech, I did choose to start with a question because I wanted to know what my audience was thinking about my topic. Where are you right now in regards to my topic? And you can ask one of two kinds of questions. You can ask a rhetorical question, which is a question that I'm not really expecting you to answer. Have you ever thought about fill in the blank? I'm not really expecting you to answer, but I just want you to start thinking about that. Or I maybe would ask an actual question, like I did. Raise your hand if you've ever donated blood. And then some of you raise your hand. So the question is a good device to use because it allows you to gauge some or get some information from your audience. And also it gets your audience thinking. Startling statement. What would you think if I told you you could save 1 hour of time every day by making this one small change? That's a startling statement. It's like, ooh, I'm interested. I would like to save 1 hour every day. Statistic, 95% of dentists approve our product. Maybe you would want to use an audio visual aid. One of my clients, it's a very science-based company, and she has to present a lot of really, according to her, dry data. And she's like, it's boring. Like, we all know it's boring, but I have to present this, so how can I make it less boring? And so I did some coaching with her, and her attention getter, we did a clip from Friends. It's just a short clip from Friends that sets up the rest of the presentation, but it infuses a little bit of personality into something that otherwise is lacking. So an audio or visual aid. Humor. So humor is good to use, but humor, there's some caution that you need to use when you're going to be using humor, because you want to think about, number one, is it funny? And not only do I think it's funny, do others think it's funny? Is it relevant? Does it have to do with the rest of what I'm going to talk about? And also you have to know your audience. Like, let's say it's going to be a little bit, maybe a little tasteless. If you know your audience and you know, like, oh, they're going to think this is hilarious. Okay, that's fine. But if you don't know your audience, no.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Now, what happens if the speaker, let's say, has a broken leg, and you want to address it right away?
Yeah.
You know, make a joke of
Absolutely.
yourself, like, you know, I was skiing and I didn't look where I was going and I ended up in a tree.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
that's like an icebreaker.
For sure.
And then people are probably curious, what happened to the
Right.
speaker?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you can make a joke, and then I wouldn't have that necessarily be your attention getter if it doesn't have to do with the rest of your presentation. But yeah, absolutely. You can, make fun of at your own expense, as long as it doesn't compromise your credibility. And something like, oh, I've got a broken leg, and oh, I, skied into a tree, that doesn't compromise your credibility. But if it's like, oh, I'm really nervous, I don't like to do these kind of things, this makes me so nervous, that compromises your credibility. So you wouldn't want to joke around about something like that, because you don't want the audience to immediately start honing in on, oh, she's really nervous, she's freaking out up there, okay? And the last one is an anecdote. Like I told the story about my mom. So especially if you've got a topic that you need to have some emotional impact, an anecdote is a great place to infuse that. Give some heart, pathos, emotional appeal. So typically what I do when I'm giving this workshop is we end our time together with everyone doing an impromptu speech. We're not doing that today. I just saw the eyes roll. Oh my God, I'm leaving. I'm going to the restroom and not coming back. We're not going to do that today. We don't have the time to do it today. But what we are going to do is, as we're going through each section of the introduction, I want you to think about, because I know some of you talked to me ahead of time, you've got a presentation coming up that you're preparing for. So think about that presentation and what would make a good attention getter for that presentation. Or if you don't have a presentation coming up, you're just trying to learn some new skills, I usually say, pick the topic of my favorite hobby, whatever your hobby is, reading, crocheting, fishing, whatever your hobby is. And then if you were trying to inform this audience, this group of people here about your hobby, how would you start it? And the reason why I want to take a little bit of time to do that is the whole stop and jot notion. You're going to get home tonight. You might not look at this again for, another week, another couple of weeks. And you're going to be like, what did she say about attention getter? But if you start doing it now, it'll jog your memory later. So take a second and think about, how would you want to start a speech? What attention getting device would you use? The second part of the introduction is the connection. We sometimes also call that the relevance. But the connection or the relevance is where you tell your audience, why does this matter to me? So it's like, pretend that your audience said to you, yeah, but what's in this for me? And the relevance statement or the connection is where you tell the audience why this topic matters to them. So let's say that I've got a speech about personal finance, and I'm going to give it to several different audiences. If I was going to be giving this speech to children, I might talk about things like budgeting or like saving for something that you really want, a big ticket item. We might talk about, just introduce the concept of like donating your money to a charity that matters to you. If I was going to be talking about personal finance to my peers, I'm 47, and so, we're talking about college, saving for college, and paying down home debt or saving for retirement. Okay, so my point is that we can tailor a topic to a different audience depending on what main points we cover. But also in your connection step, you can tell the audience, because they may think like, what does this have anything to do with me? So in your packet of handouts, there's also a sample introduction in there. And in the sample introduction, there is a connection or a relevant statement. The speech is about drunk driving, and the connection or the relevance. Can I see yours? I didn't grab one. Thank you. The connection statement says, how many of you have had a few beers to drink and thought, I'm okay to drive home, even though in the back of your mind, you know you really shouldn't? The problem of drunk driving is not going away. In fact, instances of drunk driving fatalities are at an all-time high. Thank you. And that connection is good because you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't even drink. So like this topic of drunk driving it doesn't appeal to or apply to me. Well, it does, because drunk driving fatalities, even if you're not drinking, that could impact you. And so the connection step is where we clarify for the audience why this matters. So think about your presentation that you're going to be writing about, and what would be your connection step when you tell the audience why this matters to them. And your connection is only going to be like a sentence or two. I want to give you an example on that. Like, let's say that my favorite hobby is crocheting, okay? It's not, I don't know how to crochet, but let's just say that it is. And I need to take that topic of crocheting and make that applicable to this audience. Well, I have no idea if you guys like to crochet, if you like to do handicrafts or not. So my connection statement, I can make an assumption that most of us probably feel some sort of stress in our life, okay? So I took up the hobby of crocheting, blah, 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 and our stress levels in America have increased exponentially over the last 10 years. According to such and such study, we are the most stressed out nation in the world. I'm making all of that up. But we are the most stressed out nation in the world. And the thing that has worked so well for me is crocheting. I took up crocheting and my blood pressure has dropped and I, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so sometimes you have to get a little bit creative with your connection step to link it to a particular audience, because sometimes we're given the topic and we've got to make it apply to the audience that's in front of us. Okay, number 3, the third part of your introduction is your credibility. And your credibility is where you tell the audience why they should listen to you speak on this topic. Why are you credible to speak on this topic? So you're going to tell them things like your credentials, your years of experience, any special certifications or programs that you've completed. You can talk also about personal experience that you have with the topic that sometimes is impactful to people. And again, we're talking like a sentence or two. You don't need to read them your entire resume, but you just want to let them know, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about here, and this is why. But I want to point out to you that your credibility, even if you say in your introduction, I am credible because of these reasons, your audience is actually the one that determines whether or not you're credible. So you may have the qualifications to show credibility, but really it's how your audience responds to you, whether or not they find you credible. And that's things like what? Like what determines whether someone comes across as credible or not? Yeah.
Maybe what they do to the company, how much money they save for the company.
Okay.
Or what they invent in it.
Okay. So when I'm giving the speech though, when you're actually giving the speech, what makes a speaker appear credible? Yeah. Familiarity with the subject, yeah. What were you going to say?
Well, whether you feel like you're a participant
Okay.
and not just receiving information, but
Yeah.
kind of have a more reciprocal.
Engaged, yeah.
Engaged.
Okay. What if I came in here tonight 5 minutes late, stumbling up to the front of the room and, oh my God, sorry, you guys, sorry, and futzing around with my papers, right? Credibility. What if my visual aids, weren't effective? What if, like, I don't know if you had this kind of teacher when you were in school, but I had teachers that, this was in the era of overhead projectors with the transparencies, and it was like the whole lecture was up there and the teacher would just stand there and read it sometimes. That would probably negatively affect their credibility. So keep in mind that your credibility is not just what you say there, it's also how you carry yourself, how your rapport with the audience, all of that goes into your credibility as well. So think about your topic that you're going to be talking on. What would be your credibility with that topic? How could you make the audience feel like you are worth listening to on this subject matter? And the last part of the introduction is the preview. And the preview is where you tell your audience what main points you're going to cover in the order you're going to cover them. It's kind of the roadmap for the rest of your presentation. So like today I said, I'm going to talk about message design and delivery. That's my roadmap.
If you have just a short amount of time
Mhm.
for presentation, do you still feel like there is a place for all of this? It's just that it's quicker, because of
Yeah.
the fact that you have a whole lot
Correct.
of time.
Yeah, so like Dora and I were talking before, and she said she's got a 15-minute presentation to do. And so that's not a lot of time to cover all of this. And so maybe some of it will be covered by maybe the person who introduces you would share your credibility, or maybe you can kind of combine some of those things into one. Like I actually combined my attention getter and my connection, because why is this important to you? Well, according to the Houston Chronicle, according to that. And so I combined two things into one. So yes, you should have these things, but also you are the judge. If it's taking too much time to cover all of this, and they already know you're credible because they already know who you are, then yeah, you can eliminate that. Be the judge about that in terms of if it's going to take away from the content that you can cover.
I love having that in mind because it definitely creates what I feel a much more engaging type of delivery. But in my mind, I'm also thinking that given the shorter amount of time, that I probably need to be much more succinct. Get to
Yeah.
the point a lot quicker, but
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
the thing is, you have to make sure that you're not going to lose your audience.
Yes.
Because if you make it too long, they're going to shut off.
Yep.
At some point.
Yep. That's the reason, go by that rule of thumb of the 10% of the total speaking time, because that will keep it nice and short. Okay. So next, we've done our introduction. Now we're going to be talking about the body of the presentation. And if you look at your outline, that's like the great majority of it is the body. So first you need to figure out what are the main points that you want to make. What am I even going to cover in this? That's what we accomplished with the brainstorming. And we'll go a little bit more into the language and all of that that makes up the content of our presentation. But what I wanted to point out to you in the body is you want to make sure you have transitions that go from main point to main point. Okay, so now that we talked about message design, we're going to talk about delivery. You want to have signposting. So the first method for blah, blah, blah is this. The second method for blah, blah, blah is this, so that your audience understands how does this all fit together. I gave a workshop earlier today all about having an impactful presence, and one of the things we talk about is how to build credibility. And so I said phrases like, the first step in building credibility is blah. And I did that throughout just to keep people in sync with me. What are you talking about right now? Oh, that's right, credibility. Okay. All right, so you're going to have transition. That's really important. Signposting. And the main thing that the body of your presentation will have is supporting material. And supporting material, let's say I was giving a presentation to you about fast food is bad for you. Like, let's say that was the claim I was going to make. Fast food is bad for you, but then I need to back that up. So supporting material is everything I would give you to support the claim that fast food is bad for you. So I might include things like definitions. So I'm telling you fast food is bad for you, and I'm going to say something about trans fat. I probably would need to define that because not all of us have a working definition of what trans fat is. For definitions, you want to include them if your audience doesn't know what they are. But that's why it's kind of important to think through, like, would my audience already know what this is? If I'm talking to, like, I know several of you said that you're in the medical field, and so if I'm talking to other nurses, I don't need to define these terms because they already know what those terms are. But jargon, you might need to, any technical language or acronyms, companies are big on acronyms. You might need to spell out what those are. You might need to define the acronyms or the jargon in your presentation. Statistics, okay, so that's another type of supporting material. Fast food is bad for you. In fact, if you go to McDonald's and you get a Big Mac, a large fry, and a large milkshake, it has over 200 grams of fat in it. Again, making that up, don't know, probably close to it. 200 grams of fat in it. And we're only supposed to have 50 grams of fat per day. It has 4 times, so that's a statistic. I'm supporting my claim. For statistics, you want to make sure that you're using an unbiased, reliable source, because you can find, especially now with the internet, we can find whatever number we want, we can find it. So you want to make sure you're using a reliable, unbiased source. And sometimes we want to give a ton of statistics, and we need to use them sparingly, because as an audience, we can't comprehend and retain all of these numbers. So like, let's say in my Fast Food is Bad for You, I want to talk about fast food consumption in America over the years. I would maybe want to, instead of telling you in 1970, Americans ate 2 billion, blah, 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 in 1980s, they ate, I can't remember all of that. So maybe instead I would have like a chart that showed it increasing from the 70s all the way to the 2020s. And I wouldn't have to give you the specific number, but I could just show you the trend. Holy gravy, hold on. Sorry about that. Testimony. Testimony is, there's one of 2 types that you can use. Peer testimony, so someone with firsthand experience with the topic, or expert testimony, someone who makes their career in that particular field. So for expert testimony on my fast food speech, I would maybe a cardiologist. Okay, that would be my expert testimony, or a dietitian. But peer testimony would be somebody, did you guys see that Super Size Me documentary with Morgan Spurlock, and he only ate McDonald's? Okay, so he would be a peer testimony. He is somebody who ate nothing but McDonald's for whatever, 30 days or something, and had all of these health effects because of it. So that would be peer testimony. Somebody could speak firsthand about their experience. Example. So an example would be like the Morgan Spurlock thing, that would be an example also. But it's something that explains a concept. A story that adds some emotional impact, that's good. Again, if you look at your handout with the introduction and the conclusion, there's a story in there. That's the attention getter. A story about a family who was impacted by a drunk driving accident. And so that just helps to create that emotional appeal. All right, and then we move on to the conclusion. And the conclusion is basically a past tense version of your introduction, okay? So your conclusion is where you have a review, where you remind the audience of the main points that you covered. You restate your connection, where you remind the audience why this topic matters to them. And then you have a concluding statement or a memorable close. And all of those devices that you used for your attention getter, you can use for your memorable close. a statistic, a story, humor, etc.
Could call to action go there?
Yes, exactly. And then if you have a call to action, it would go in your conclusion. When you tell your audience very specifically, this is what I want you to do. And the call to action, that's a big deal. The call to action does need to be really specific. So like for my blood donation thing, go right upstairs and sign up at the information desk so the audience knows what do you expect from me? What do you want from me? Okay, so that is the general structure of the speech. Do you have questions on anything that we've covered so far? Okay. So let's move on to language. How are we going to craft our message? There's a phrase that was in a textbook that I used to teach out of that is, meaning is in people, not in words. Meaning is in people, not in words. I want to give you, we're going to do a real brief activity to explain to you exactly what I mean by that. So you've all got paper and pens. All I'm going to have you do is write down an answer to this question that there's going to be 4 questions. It'll all make sense. She has a large home. How many square feet is it? You're just writing down how many square feet you think the large home is. She has a large home. How many square feet is it? Okay. Number 2, he is quite old. How old is he? Number 3, she watches a lot of TV. How many hours a day does she watch? Number 4, that is an expensive car. How much does it cost? Okay, she has a large home. How many square feet is it? Shout out some answers to me. 4,000. 20,000. 4. 5,800. Okay, so we went from 4,000 to 20,000, give or take. He is quite old. How old is he? 8. What'd you say? 95. You said 80? 80?
I have to go up, so I gotta say
82. What'd you say, Jessica? 92. Okay. So we went from like 80 to 90, 95. 80 to 95. Okay,
Years ago, 20 years ago, you would have said, as a teenager,
yeah.
that old saying, remember, don't trust anyone over 30.
Oh,
That
cool.
was an old one. That was a real old one.
She watches a lot of TV. How many hours a day? 3 to 6. Wow, 666. That is an expensive car. How much does it cost? 100, would you say? 50? 50 to 125. Okay, so let's go back to this. Meaning is in people, not in words. What do I mean by that? We all have a different definition for words. Language is arbitrary and it is ambiguous, which means that we need to tell people the conclusion we want them to draw based on the words that we give them. So rather than me saying she has a large home, I need to tell you what I mean by that. Or if I say this is really important, well, your definition of important is different than my definition of important. Or if I say we had a really good year, what does that mean? How much money, we're in the black? Is that what your definition of a really good year? So if you aren't precise with your language, as we just saw, it's all over the place. Interpretation is all over the place. So if you're not precise with your words, you are trusting your audience to draw their own conclusion. And the problem is that we draw different conclusions. So if it's important that we're all on the same page, then you need to be really precise. I want to talk about persuasion because as we talked about persuasion, it's really, it's more complicated than informing. And so I want to break this definition down because there's a lot of words for this definition. So I want to break it down. It says persuasion is a process that involves a communicator who tries to influence the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of another communicator through message design and delivery. Yikes, a lot of words. Okay, so let's break it down. Persuasion is a process. That means that we can't expect to be able to say our message one time and someone who was over here, like on the continuum, let's say agree or disagree, this is our continuum. We cannot expect that someone is going to go from here to here in one telling of the message. Think about when we used to watch TV and there were commercials on, and if you watch, I watched Oprah every day when I was in high school and college, and every day at 3 o'clock, there was the same commercials that were playing, most days. And that was because advertisers knew we had to hear the message many times before we would buy in. So keep in mind that persuasion is a process. And so let's say you're trying to persuade someone to whatever. Let's go back to my blood donation example. I don't know what your reasons are for not donating, so I don't want to come on too strong because my end goal is for you to donate blood. But I can't expect that you've gone your whole life not donating, and now all of a sudden, because I said, oh, it's a big deal, you're going to change your mind. So view it as a process that involves a communicator who tries to influence the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions. So that's important because sometimes we're just trying to get our audience to change their mind. Sometimes we're trying to get our audience to change their values. That's harder. Sometimes we're trying to get our audience to take action. Because sometimes, like if I were giving a presentation about brushing our teeth twice a day, it's not enough for you, my audience. Let's say you guys only brush your teeth once a day and I'm trying to persuade you to do it twice. It's not enough for you to be like, yeah, I should. I don't just want your agreement. I need you to take action and do something about it. All right? So you've got to know what is your call to action? What is going to satisfy this persuasion requirement? Of another communicator through message design and delivery. That means, the message design and delivery part means that both what you say and how you say it need to be working together. Because you've probably been in those situations where someone, maybe this person has a really interesting message, but they don't deliver it in a way that is impactful. Or maybe they have amazing delivery, but it's like there is not a lot of content there. So yeah.
I once listened to a program where a doctor was trying to talk about some type of cancer, but he wasn't talking to other doctors. So he was very knowledgeable, but we didn't understand what he was trying to say.
Yes. You've got to know who your audience is to make sure your language is appropriate for them. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, he knew he was good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I want you to think about that for a moment, about what does that mean for you when you're giving a persuasive speech? Like, what's your takeaway from that based on what we just talked about with the definition? What's your takeaway from that? So what? Yeah, point out to the audience why it would benefit them. Yeah, what's in it for them? Yeah. And this is where we're talking about the target audience that I mentioned earlier. Keeping in mind that some people, no matter what you say, will never be persuaded. So if you're thinking of an audience, there's the people who already agree with you. the people who will never agree with you, and then there's everybody in the middle that haven't made up their minds yet, okay? We don't want to cater too much to the people who already agree with us because they already agree with us. We don't want to cater to the people who don't agree with us and never will because we're wasting our breath. So you want to focus on your target audience. You don't want to alienate either of your extremes, but you want to focus on your target audience, the people that you still have a chance of persuading. Okay, so keep that in mind when you don't want to totally ignore the other people, but just keep your focus on the target audience. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the message section. I want you to stop and jot for a minute. What are your takeaways from the message section? What are the things that you're like, ugh, I want to remember that? I'd love to hear from you on that. What were some takeaways from the message section that resonated with you? Yeah.
About your credibility, about statistics, any information you're giving your audience, it's got to be based on fact.
Yeah.
Otherwise you don't use that.
Yes, it's got to be based on fact. You need to have integrity as a speaker. What else? Yeah, what was the most important thing to you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the credibility.
The benefit to your audience, how are they going to benefit?
Yeah. How's your audience going to benefit?
I think having that clarity has to be, what are the important points and how you transition that it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of also not shying away from making it very clear what
Yes.
is it that you want them to
Yeah.
do. You know, if
Yeah.
my desire is to persuade someone
Yes.
versus just providing the information
And hoping, yeah.
that they will make
Right.
the right decision, but being able to be convinced in that aspect.
Yeah. There's you talked about, that clear transitions and structure. There's a phrase that we always used to say, tell them what you're going to tell them. That's your introduction. Tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So its introduction is tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. It might seem to you like, oh my gosh, I'm repeating what I'm saying. No, to the audience who's just hearing it for the first time, introduction, body, conclusion, that way they get a chance to hear kind of the highlights 3 times, so it will stick in their memory more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. Your conclusion will have a summary, it will have a recap of your main points, but that's a good word, summary, as opposed to sometimes people, and in conclusion, and then it's like they go back and rehash everything that they just talked about. Don't overdo your summary. You can just say, today we talked about message design and delivery in regards to public speaking, and then move on. Okay, so we're gonna move on to delivery. Yeah.
What's also important that you mentioned is an introduction.
Yeah.
They have a attention getter.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing 10% of the whole body
Mm-hmm.
in the presentation. And that's true because this is your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the beginning, you have to have something.
Yeah. Yeah. You can get, in the attention getter, you can gain, your audience in your speech, or you can lose your audience in the first, you know, yeah, right away. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to read a script for a speech, because we're talking about that whole message design and delivery needs to be working together in order to have persuasion, right? So I'm going to read you a script and then we're going to talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stark County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening, and thank you not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davison, and I'm seeking our party's nomination for the position of Stark County Treasurer in November of 2010. In terms of my background, I'm from the village of Minerva, where I'm serving my 13th year of elected service as Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in communication. In terms of elections across Stark County, I have represented our party twice on the county ballot, in both the primary and the general elections, when I ran for Stark County Clerk of Courts in '96 and Stark County Commissioner in 2000. And I will not apologize for my tone tonight. I have been a Republican in times good, and I have been a Republican in times bad. Okay, that is someone's speech. Now we're going to watch that come to life.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Stark County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening. And thank you not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davison, and I am seeking our party's nomination for the position of Stark County Treasurer on November 10th, November of 2010, excuse me. In terms of my background, I am from the village of Minerva, where I am serving my 13th year of elected service as a Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in communication. In terms of elections across Stark County, I have represented our party twice on the county ballot, in both the primary and the general elections, when I ran for Stark County Clerk of Courts in 1996 and Stark County Commissioner in 2000, and I will not apologize for my tone tonight. I have been a Republican in times good, and I have been a Republican in times bad.
What? Right? So let's talk about that for a second. So I read you the script ahead of time, and then you watched it. So what was it about his message and delivery that didn't work? Did not work.
I think it actually worked.
Okay?
I persuaded me never to vote.
Yeah. Maybe not work the way he wanted it to, persuaded you to not vote for him. Yeah.
Someone in the chat said,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, what drug?
Yeah. Why was he, yeah, pacing back and forth? What drugs was he on? Why was he so mad? Right? Too passionate. Yes, yes. Absolutely. So he was, we didn't know, honestly, when I first watched his presentation, I didn't even pay attention to the words he said because I was paying so much attention to how he was saying it. Those two things were not working together. And how did you feel? Like, check in with your body. How did you feel listening to his speech? Uncomfortable. Yeah.
And he was moving around so much.
Yeah.
We were concentrating on his body motions rather than what he was saying.
Yeah, you were concentrating and paying attention to his body more than what he was saying. Yeah.
I was confused why he was like looking at a script like he didn't know that he,
Yeah. Yeah, he's looking at a script to know, like, what were my degrees in? When did I run for this? Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's self-promotion, it's also the accolades that the traction.
Yeah. So it's very important that the two, delivery and content, are working together to make your message persuasive. So I want to brainstorm for just a moment. what are some delivery traits that when you see them, you would coin them as bad delivery traits? What are some things that you're like, that's just a bad delivery trait?
If the emotion doesn't match what you're saying, like with envy,
Yeah.
and it wasn't appropriate.
So emotion doesn't match words, okay? What else? And this isn't necessarily just for Phil Davison, but like just when you're watching a speaker and you're like, they're not very good. What is it about them?
No eye contact.
No eye contact. Yeah. What else? Say that again. Odd movements. Yeah. Somebody else said something. Yeah. I'm going to say like no concise. Yeah, long-winded.
And it was disjointed in something. It was just so odd and obtuse.
Yeah. So that's probably more specific to Phil. Yes.
This
There
was-
too much information about him and not how his experience will benefit the people who will
Okay.
vote for him.
So we don't want a speaker to be self-centered. What were you going to say, Catherine?
Couple from the chat, I think it was from the first question, said he is trying to gain credibility, but he doesn't realize the outcome of the way of his approach. And then they also said lack of self-confidence can be raveled by body language, or revealed by body language, although the message can be very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So think about, like what if, have you ever been in a situation where a speaker talks so quietly and you're sitting forward and then after a while you're like, forget it. I'm not going to be able to hear what they're saying. Somebody who talks too quietly, somebody who talks too loudly.
Sometimes someone who has a very strong accent can't understand.
Yeah. Sometimes accents are hard to understand. Somebody, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation where someone faces their visual aids a lot, but turns their back on their audience. Have you ever seen when people just read their speech the whole time from their notes? They don't even look up from their notes. Or like Phil Davison, he was pacing. He was all over the place, right? He was lots of energy. Fidgeting. I show this example speech. I showed it this morning in my workshop, and it's like a guy who's doing all of these bad communication behaviors. And he is talking about having extra body movement. And so he's kind of doing like this thing. And the people in the class were laughing and they were like, I'm like, people do that all the time. Shifting weight or fidgeting or moving all over the place. Pausing too long between sentences to where you're like, did you forget what you were going to say? Speaking in monotone, some people, they just talk like this and everything sounds exactly the same. There's no variety to it. So there's a lot of habits that detract from your message. And so I want to talk about some delivery tips that are going to be positive towards your message. So Toastmasters, you might have heard of Toastmasters International. It's a nonprofit educational organization that has local meetings where you have an opportunity to practice your public speaking skills. And they gave some different tips. One of them is to know your information. Knowing your information helps your delivery so much because you're not worried so much about what you're going to say. Now you get to focus on how you're going to say it. If I only came up here and gave one word for the entire presentation, it would be practice. That is the most important thing that you can do to get better at public speaking, is to practice. I still practice every one of my presentations before I do them, because it's important just to keep it foremost in your mind so you know what it is that you want to say, how you want to say it.
Do you practice with an audience or friends, or sometimes even just being able
That's a great question. Yeah. And so what I think is the best way to practice is all of those ways. And I'm not just saying that to be, to whatever, belabor the point, but practicing in front of people is really good because that gives you feedback that you have to get used to. Also, you have to get used to presenting in front of people, but then they can offer you feedback and say, this didn't make sense, I didn't get this, or, oh, that was really good when you did that. Practicing by yourself is good, but when I say practicing, I don't mean just looking over your notes. Sometimes people think that just by looking over your notes, that's enough. And what I mean is read, like say it out loud, practice with a timer. Like tonight, this is a 2-hour presentation, right? Can you imagine, oh, I didn't practice enough, so at 9 o'clock, I'm still here. Y'all would be throwing something at me to get me off the stage, right? So you wanna know how long, especially you've got a 15-minute time limit. You need to practice that so that you know you're gonna stop at 15 minutes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I talked to nurses, I feel like they gotta like chew that down because they don't have any.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Too. How do you remember all the information you want to tell your audience without looking at your notes too much?
Practicing. By practicing, because if you, so like every time I go to do a presentation, I have all of my words that I want to say written down in front of me. I am not anti-notes. I know some people are like, oh, you shouldn't really take notes up there with you. I am a fan of notes because it keeps me on track. And that way, if I'm like, I don't, like right this second, I do not know what my next line is that I need to say. I don't know what my next point is without looking down. And so I do have to look down to see what the next thing is that I want to say. But I'm also so familiar with this that I can really quickly find my place. Oh, I want to talk about know your audience, okay? So know the audience. So using your notes to jog your memory about what's next, absolutely. But also practice it so you can kind of remember what it is that's supposed to come next. So know the audience, know who it is that you're in front of. And some of that comes with when people are, entering the room, introducing yourself, shaking hands, getting to know them. If you've got the ability to, sometimes we can make assumptions, like this is the Ignite business thing. So I've got people that are interested in business or in career. I can kind of make some assumptions. I can also make assumptions just looking at my audience. But also you can ask the person who invited you to speak, tell me a little bit more about them, just so you know what is their knowledge level. What do they already know about my topic? What are they interested in? Are they going to be a hostile audience or are they going to be friendly? Because sometimes we have to give presentations to an audience that is not interested in what we have to say. Know the room. Okay, that's a big thing too. Knowing the room, because different rooms have different feels to them. All right, so like I've been in situations where I'll have a room this size, which is a pretty good size room, but there's only like 3 people there, and that's kind of you have to pivot in the moment to make that space work. And so knowing the room, do you need a microphone? Do you not? Where's the screen going to be at? I showed up early tonight to try and figure out where do I need to stand so my Zoom people can see me, but my audience can see me. How far can I move? So all of that is really important too. Relax. And that's the one where you're like, yeah, thanks, Tiffany. Super helpful. But by relax, I mean, when you get to the front of the room, elevated heart rate, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. So deep breath while you're still sitting at your seat before you get up. Take a deep breath, relax. Maybe you do some positive self-talk. The story I'm telling myself, I'm a big believer of the story I'm telling myself can work for you or against you. So tell yourself the good story. I know what I'm talking about. These are friendly people. No one wants to see me fail. People are here to learn something, so relax. The other thing that kind of helps with relaxing is usually when we're called upon to give a presentation, it is about something that we're interested in. So let that nervousness get transformed into enthusiasm about sharing your topic with this group of people. And yeah, you've got to talk yourself through that, but that's exciting if you've got a message that you want to share. Don't apologize. What I mean by that is you're going to think, oh my God, everybody knows I'm freaking out. Everyone knows how nervous I am. They can see my face is red. They can see it. They know it. They can see me sweating. Like I'm freaking out right now. They can see that. Your audience cannot see it. So you don't need to call attention to it. A lot of times people will go up to the front and apologize about, oh, I didn't have much time to put this together. Oh, I hate public speaking, whatever the thing is. No, don't call attention to something that we might not have noticed. It just detracts from your presence, from your credibility, if you're immediately telling us why we shouldn't think you're doing a good job. Eliminate distracting mannerisms. So I think it's really important for you to videotape yourself when you're practicing. I'm not a huge proponent of practicing in front of a mirror because I think in the moment then you are just watching what you're doing instead of paying attention to how you're talking. So set up your phone, record yourself, watch it back later. It's also really helpful to watch it back 2 times. Watch it back 1 time with no volume so you can just pay attention to your body. And then watch it back 1 time with volume so you can pay attention to how you sound. Because you might not even be aware of the distracting mannerisms that you have until you watch it back. That's also the reason it's really good to practice in front of someone else, especially someone that you feel comfortable with who can point out to you, hey, you're doing this weird thing with your eyebrows, or whatever it is. Also for the distracting mannerisms, it's important to remove anything that is going to be distracting. If you're a, pocket change jiggler, take the change out of your pocket. If you know that whatever the thing is, you're gonna roll up your papers if you have them. So just remove anything that's going to be distracting to your audience. And the last one is to have purposeful movement. Think about Phil Davison, opposite of purposeful movement, frantic, all over the place movement. So purposeful movement means, we're kind of in a different sort of situation here because we've got our Zoom people. But if we didn't have our Zoom people, I'd be doing a lot of this, coming over and engaging with this side of the room and making sure that everybody feels engaged. But sometimes we're in situations where we don't have control over that. But it's really important if you do have the ability to move all over, move and help engage other areas of your audience. So I want you to stop and think for a second about who is a person whose delivery you respond to in a positive way. So think about, maybe it's a famous person, politician, maybe it's somebody you work with, maybe it's your pastor, maybe it's your boss. Whose delivery do you respond to in a positive way? And then what is it about their delivery that you really respond to, that moves you? Is it that, they just always seem so articulate? He always has really good stories to tell. He has a great rapport with the audience. He uses humor really well. She engages. What is it that moves you? You mentioned the TED Talks, and that's how I get a lot. I love watching the TED Talks. If you haven't watched them, that's a great resource to check out because you can just learn a lot about so many different topics, but also about delivery and how to deliver a compelling message. And the reason I ask you this is because I want you to think about what specifically it is that, because maybe that will tell you how you want to improve. Oh, that's what it is. They tell jokes. They engage. Oh, okay. And you might not have thought about that before.
Excuse me, what are the TED Talks? Is that an acronym?
So yes, it is an what is it? Technology, education, and but it's a website is tedtalks.com, I think, or ted.com.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find them all on YouTube. And
yeah.
they offer so many, it's like knowledge worth sharing. That's like
Knowledge worth sharing, yeah.
They're saying knowledge worth sharing, and it has to be 18 minutes or less, and it's either TED or TEDx, and it's about everything.
Everything.
Anything that you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing about YouTube is once you select one, it's gonna suggest things for you.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're gonna like this one. Like,
Yeah.
right.
And then you're down the rabbit hole of, yeah.
Now, I'm curious, Tiffany, with so many presentations being also virtual, you know, like my mind thinks, yes, the moving and doing that. But I'll be honest, sometimes I keep thinking, should I be looking at in here or, you know, and I get distracted and I'm looking at somebody's picture that pops up.
Right.
If you can talk a little bit about delivery when it is you presenting in front of your computer.
So the question is how to present via Zoom or in a remote setting. So I have a workshop that I lead on that. And the tip that I will say, so is it, do you look in the camera or do you look at the people's faces? So I personally, if I'm doing a webinar, so I can't see people's faces, I look at the camera. But if I have people's faces Brady Bunch style, I look at their faces, because the important thing is connecting to your audience. And so I want to connect to the actual people. And I even pointed out sometimes, especially when I'm leading a workshop like this, I'm making the choice to look at your faces. So it looks, eye contact is huge. I can't imagine, like, okay, is that my camera up there? I don't even know where my camera is. I think that's my camera, right? Is that my Zoom camera? Okay, so like, can you imagine if the whole time that you guys were right here, I was just looking at that camera? Like, that would be so bizarre to do that. And yet that's what we do in a Zoom room all of the time, is look at where the camera is instead of at our audience. So when you are interacting, I look at the people's faces. And when you talked about, like, so I always, when I'm in a Zoom, I turn off my self view. So if you just right click on your image and it says hide self view, I do that always, because otherwise I'm just watching myself and I'm like paying attention to, oh my God, I didn't know I did that with my face. Oh my God, you know, oh, that hair, oh, whatever the thing is. And then you just get caught up in your own stuff. So I always hide my self view so that I don't even see myself, because then I can just concentrate on, because I don't know what I'm looking like right now talking to you. So it's weird when you on Zoom can just see yourself. So yeah, and there are a lot of things that stay the same, you know, that stay the same, whether you're talking via Zoom or you're talking in person, but there are some things that are different, especially like audience engagement. You want to make sure you've got a lot of opportunities for engagement when it's over Zoom. Okay. And some of these stop and jot questions, you might even want to, you know, jot them down so that you can come back to them. I want to give us plenty of time for Q&A. So, you know, maybe it's even a matter of jotting them down so you can come back to them. So I want to talk about verbal delivery. There's verbal and there's nonverbal delivery. And verbal delivery is how you say the words that come out of your mouth. And keeping in mind that your audience wants you to talk with them, to them, not at them. So the first term I want to define is enunciation. And enunciation is clear pronunciation. You know, so sometimes like people mumble, like, I don't know if you have teenagers, but I have teenagers. And so like sometimes I mumble and you're like, excuse me, what? I don't know what you're saying. So enunciation is making sure that it's clearly pronounced. We know what it is that you're saying. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dr. Seuss book, Oh Say Can You Say, but it's a book of tongue twisters, and we're gonna read this together. And those of you at home, read along with us. But I want you to say it out loud, starting with Fred, or Fritz, in just a second. I want you to pay attention to what your mouth has to do in order to say all of this clearly, okay? So let's start at the top. Fritz needs Fred, and Fred needs Fritz. Fritz feeds Fred, and Fred feeds Fritz. Fred feeds Fritz with ritzy Fred food. Fritz feeds Fred with ritzy Fritz food. And Fritz, when fed, has often said, I'm a Fred-fed Fritz. Fred's a Fritz-fed Fred. What? Right? So did you pay attention? Like, we don't normally have to move our mouth quite that purposefully, okay? But that is kind of what your mouth should feel like when you are enunciating, when you are articulating. Articulating is kind of synonymous with enunciation, but it's also like, you know, stringing words together in a sophisticated fashion and sounding, you know, we say like, oh, so-and-so sounds articulate. It's more than just pronunciation. It's also like how you put ideas and words together. So rate, in terms of rate, you want to make sure that your rate is quick enough that your audience is not like, come on, but not so fast that we're having a hard time following. And the thing with rate is, a lot of times people will say like, I'm a naturally fast talker, like what do I do about that? And it's not so much a matter of you trying to change your normal rate of speech, but it's incorporating pauses at appropriate times. So if you're explaining a process, let's say I'm explaining to you how to work this device, let's say. Okay, so you'll see on here, there's the right arrow. Okay, so everybody find the right arrow on your device. You see it? Pause. Okay. All right, so you push the right arrow. Okay, everybody find the left arrow. So if you're explaining a process, like incorporate pauses so that your audience can get caught up. Also, you can change up your rate of speech. If you're talking about something and you're really excited about it, sometimes we talk faster because we get super excited. But if we want our audience to think about something, because we're really passionate about it, we're going to slow it down, and we're going to incorporate pauses because we want them to think. Okay, so play around with your rate of speech. It can help convey different emotions.
Also, if you're telling a joke or something funny, you want to wait till they stop laughing.
Yes.
Before you start talking, because they're not going to hear you.
Exactly. Don't talk over your laughter, right? Yes. Pause. Projection is the next one. So making sure that you're speaking loudly enough for everybody to hear. Project your voice. I don't know if you've been in these situations where you're like in a big meeting and there's a microphone being passed and people are like, oh, I don't need the microphone, I talk loudly enough. And then you're like, I can't hear you. If there's a microphone offered, take the microphone, okay? There's a reason for that. I know it's uncomfortable, microphones are weird. We don't like how we sound in them, but take it. Vocalize pauses. I think you were the one that alluded to these. It's the ums, the uhs, the you knows, the likes. Vocalized pauses are our way of holding the floor. We don't know what we want to say next. We're not comfortable with the silence. And so we say a word, because we're just trying to buy ourselves some time. But if you just stop, I don't know what I'm going to say next. But that's okay, because it gives my audience a chance to catch up, gives me a chance to figure out what I want to say next. I sound confident because I'm not saying, okay. So one of the ways, like you mentioned that you audio record yourself. So vocalize pauses, you might not even know that you have one. So audio record yourself. You could even audio record yourself just talking, talking through something.
I do a lot of ums. I do a lot
Yeah.
of ums.
Yeah,
and take
yeah.
a breath.
Absolutely.
And
And
then I caught that all from recording myself. I caught
Yes.
myself doing a lot of stuff, and I felt like it was beneficial.
absolutely. And that's, I mean, that's a great way to do it, is audio record yourself, figure out what it is, and then, you know, whatever, like we made a list of kind of what are your communication struggles, like cross those off one at a time, figure out where are you struggling right now, and work through that problem one at a time. Inflection. So inflection is the up down, it's the vocal variety, rather than just everything sounding like this. We just have a, you know, then we work to have variety in it. Makes it more interesting to listen to. If you're sounding bored with your topic and you're the speaker, can you imagine how bored we are as your audience? I was in show choir when I was in high school, and I liked the singing part of it, but I was not good at the dancing part of it. And my director would always say, because he would say, like, you know, be more expressive, and I would be like, and try to be more expressive. And he was like, give me more and I'll tell you when you've done too much. Okay? That's how I feel about some of this, because like with the inflection, with the vocal variety, with, you know, we're going to talk about facial expressions in a minute. Sometimes you're going to feel like I'm doing too much. Almost never. Almost never. Keep doing even more, so that we have to pull you back a little bit. Because sometimes in an effort to seem controlled, we remove any, and I used to do this too, like I would want to just seem not nervous, and so I would almost seem robotic. Don't remove your personality just because you're trying to not seem nervous. Okay, so let's talk about nonverbal delivery. And I've got this graph up here because, and those numbers, I've done the research, and it's kind of anywhere from like 20/80 to 30/70. I've seen different numbers, but the point is the majority of the meaning of your message is in the nonverbal. Facial expressions, tone of voice, movement, appearance, all of that. Okay, because like what if I said the sentence, oh no, I'm not mad at all. Okay? But if I said it like, oh no, I'm not mad at all. Like that's right, most of the meaning is conveyed that way. But if I was like, oh no, I'm not mad at all, right? It's not so much the words that I say, it's how I say them. And we will believe how you say it more than we believe what you say. So make sure that what you're saying is in agreement with how you're saying it. If you're saying, no, I'm not mad at all, and you look like you're angry, then we are going to believe that you are in fact angry at us. There's a quotation that I found, and I didn't even write the source down, I apologize, but it's, I can't hear what you're saying because I see what you're doing. So there's also another concept that was in a lot of public speaking books I taught out of, that was, we cannot not communicate. We cannot not communicate, which means everything that we're doing is communication. And we are all interpreting the communication that everyone else is doing. Like I'm reading your body language right now. I'm reading your facial expression. You're reading me right now. We're assigning meaning to all of it. So everything we do is communication. Now that can get really overwhelming. And you don't want to distract yourself from communicating by thinking about, oh, I hope that she likes this thing that I'm doing, right? You don't want to take it too far, but just be aware of the fact that everything you do is communicating something to your audience. So let's talk about nonverbal. Eye contact. So eye contact, you guys mentioned that's no eye contact is a sign of bad delivery. So eye contact is good. And there's two words I want you to remember for eye contact. You want it to be varied and sustained. So varied means that you make eye contact with every person in your audience. And sustained means that you hold it for, like you can say, one person, one thought. So I'm going to look at you for this sentence, and then I'm going to look at you for my next sentence, and then I'm going to look at you for my next sentence. Some people, if they're uncomfortable with eye contact, they will very quickly just kind of flit from, you know, all over their audience, and I've never even connected with anyone. Eye contact is a way for you to show connection to your audience, for you to read what they're giving back to you. If you don't look at your audience, you're not getting anything back from them. So eye contact is very, very important. Facial expressions. So you want your face, nonverbal, your facial expressions. If you say, this is a really big problem, your face needs to show that. If you say, I am so happy that you are all here today, your face needs to show that. Gestures. Using your body. So gestures, that's a thing that it's kind of hard to get comfortable with. I think gestures is something that, you know, the more confident that you are, the more you're able to take up space in front of an audience. But if you're not comfortable, if you're like, I don't like this, then we make ourselves smaller. And so gestures is something that you want to work on incorporating. Absolutely. You can, like Phil Davison, he was, yeah, he did a little too much on the gesturing. But thank you, that's a good point. All of this is balance, okay? Body movement, same thing. You can go too far with it, but body movement. Body movement can show confidence of you taking up space. It can signal transitions. You can walk on your main points. And appearance. So appearance is, for a couple of reasons. First impressions are really important. So it's important that our appearance tells our audience what we want the message to be. Appearance is also important because we can have some appearance things that are distracting to an audience. Like, have you ever talked to anybody who's got something in their tooth, like a piece of spinach in their tooth? If you're like me, I can't think of anything else except for the fact that you got something in your tooth. That's all I can think about. So before I came up here, I went into the restroom and I checked my stuff out. Got to make sure I got, you know, everything's where it's supposed to be, nothing in my teeth. All right. So keep that in mind with your appearance. It can be really distracting to an audience. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, especially with a woman who has a low cut
Yeah.
shirt on. That's all you look at.
Yeah.
Or what I can't stand is like people who are advertising a product on TV.
Yeah.
And they have a religious symbol.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not against people who
Sure.
are religious, but when you're selling a product, you should not be advertising your personal beliefs.
We cannot not communicate. Everything is communicating. And so, yeah, you got to keep that in mind. That might be offensive to someone or at least, yeah, distracting.
People also do that. Like, one of the girls, like, she's polite, that's what she does, and so she has 1972 on her necklace, and she does it to spark people's conversations. So you have to take that as like, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
They probably want you
To,
to
yeah,
like
to
that,
have a,
you
yeah,
know? So it's like,
yeah,
or they just have no idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and keeping in mind too, like your, you want to make sure you're dressing appropriately for the environment and for the audience. So thinking through who am I going to be talking to? My training today was for some people who work in like the city works department for local municipalities. And so, you know, it was a bunch of guys that work in forestry and you know, if I would have gone in there being super businessy, that would have been inappropriate. So thinking that through. Michael Meskin says the best way to conquer stage fright is to know what you're talking about. And I would say the best way to conquer stage fright is to have practiced ahead of time. Okay, so we talked about message design and we talked about delivery. And I want you to think about, sorry, I thought I had a slide in there. I want you to think about for just a minute, and then we're gonna be done so that we can move on to Q&A. But when was a time that you delivered a speech and felt good about it? Like, when did you feel like I connected with my audience, or, you know, I said what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it. And we're not going to spend time on that right now, but I want you to think about that when you leave here. Like, when was a time that you were happy with what you did? And then think about that a little bit. Why? What was it about that situation? Was it that the audience was friendly? Was it that you were really prepared? The subject matter was meaningful to you? Because we want to try and recreate that. So think through what made it successful that time. If you can speak, you can influence. And if you can influence, you can change lives. A lot of times we limit ourselves and we don't seek out opportunities to share what we have to say because we're nervous, we're intimidated. And so I commend you for being here tonight, for those of you that are joining us from home, because you're taking the first step, you know, and maybe it's a matter of like, I'm pretty confident with it. I'm just, you know, hoping to take a few pointers. I don't know where you're at right now, but I commend you because you're doing the work that needs to happen to feel more comfortable. So thank you, and let's open it up to Q&A. Do you have anything, or anybody on Zoom? Any specific questions, things you're working on?
So I have one specific question. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But it does happen. Sometimes I'll be speaking and I was like, now, where was I going with it? And usually I can like circle around and get back to it. But is there a way to like address that if you just start talking and realize that you lost your point? And you lost
Yeah.
what you were talking about, or the question that was asked?
Yeah, so I'm all about transparency and vulnerability. And so I would even say, like, oh, can you give me a second? Like, I just lost my train of thought for a second. Like, hold on. I would, you know, and you've got that kind of a demeanor. So I would, you know, just admit it and take a second, because sometimes in an effort to correct, and we end up over here because we couldn't remember where we were going. Now, maybe you're able to just correct on your own, but, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying in the moment, give me just a second, you know, I need to gather my thoughts, and then I.
Usually just like get to a point.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And my thing is like, I'm talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. You've got the same message that you're. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you look at your notes? Do you have notes?
No, I don't use notes, but I've been doing a bunch of very different types of things because I've been presenting research. And so I'm usually just giving them like working with an awareness campaign. So I just tell them about it. But today I gave a little presentation and I had images. So I had 4 images. So I was talking about a surgery, and I'm a nurse. So I was talking about the surgery. So when I needed to tell them about something, I showed them. So yeah. But I'm still trying to work it out. I don't know where it's going. And now the speaking opportunities are coming, and I feel like I'm where.
Yeah.
And now that I go through this, I was like, oh,
Yeah. Good. What else?
The time element. If you have a speech and sometimes realize you don't have enough time to really finish it off, you have to take some like salient phrases and encapsulate real fast, transcend into the full thing of the story, the full context. What would you pick out besides just some of the substance if you don't have enough time? And just the reverse too, if we have too much time, and you already have reached the conclusion almost in your mind, what would you do?
So the question was, if you have too much time and not enough content, or not enough time and too much content.
Right.
So the main, yeah, and for the most part, if you have practiced it enough and are prepared enough, then you kind of know how long it's going to be because you've timed it ahead of time. But I have filler a lot of times. So like if I've got more time and not enough content, I will have, when I say filler, what I mean is like I can open it up to a discussion question that's going to take a little bit of time, or you know, in the moment, I will sometimes edit down like, okay, I don't have time for that. So I will edit down, and maybe even marking in your outline or something, I should be at this time right now, or,
Because sometimes it depends on the audience.
yep, because some audiences are more engaged and more, you know, talk more, and yeah,
So like
yeah,
slow it down more, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to get to certain points.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough time, excuse me, we have to consolidate fast on the mark.
yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of like adding, you know, things that, so get your important stuff out of the way at the beginning, and then any sort of, you know, sometimes we'll do practice activities. I'll put those at the end when I can kind of fudge the time a little bit more. So I think it's just having a plan ahead of time.
Plan ahead of time, if you're well prepared.
Yeah.
But just with intangibles.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't control.
Yeah. You can't, and yeah. Yeah.
Some flexibility.
Yeah.
And some speakers will say, please do not ask questions till the very end.
Right.
Please write them down. This way, the speaker won't get off on the tangent.
Right. Right.
She won't be distracted by what she needs to say.
Yeah. Did someone have anything in the chat?
I would like to ask something. I'm not sure if I'm heard or not.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so somebody mentioned earlier about the strong accent destroying a good speech. Now, I have a very strong accent, as I'm originally from another country, and I will have my first ever public speech in a few days. So a big issue is that because I'm so aware of my strong accent, this comes out exactly when I needed the most not to be there. How do you overcome something like this?
Well, I will say I understood everything you said very clearly, and everyone here's nodding their heads. I don't know if you can see the audience, but I understood everything that you said. So I think it's, if you know that it is an issue, you know, just slowing down and speaking, just making sure that, you know, the enunciation and the articulation, making sure you're paying attention to that. But your pacing was very good, so that I understood everything.
Thank you
So I
very
think-
much.
Yeah.
That's a self-esteem boost. Thank you.
Good. Well, we all agree.
Thank you.
I actually like it when someone speaks different languages. I like it when they throw the other language in.
Mm.
Sometimes, like when they'll say something and then, you know, throw in their.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and I agree, you talked perfectly.
Right?
That was really nice.
Yeah.
You know, English not being my first language, I remember once upon a time that thinking that the goal was to really eradicate that accent.
Mhm.
Because that way I can learn to speak
Mhm.
it correctly. And I realized I will never be able to do
Mhm.
that. Now I take it as a sign of, ooh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
you know, I like it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I do understand that sometimes people's ability to speak the language
Mhm.
might be at a level that is still emergent, that
Right.
makes it hard
Right.
sometimes to
Yeah.
understand too. But
Yeah.
it's not my goal to get
Yeah.
rid of that accent.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's who I am.
That's who you are. Yeah. If you don't have any other questions, thank you. Thank you for being so attentive. There's my contact information. If you have any questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out. That's my website. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here.